The Facebook and Cambridge Analytica data shenanigans is just the tip of the iceberg. Brought to you in part by Lulzbot, not the data shenanigans. Just this show was brought to you in part by Lulzbot 3D printers, makers of the Lulzbot Mini. That little 3D printer that I've got back there, it's glorious. It is one of the most phenomenal 3D printers on the planet, and the company is a huge fan of free software, open source, and open source hardware. You can find out more over at lulzbot.com. All right, let's get into this. So, this data of 50 million, roughly, Facebook users was sent over or made available to Cambridge Analytica. This is a big deal and is rightly getting a lot of press attention around the world, an unusually large amount of press attention. There are many aspects to this that I am not going to touch on today. There are threats of lawsuits against journalists. There's political affiliations of various organizations. There's stock price craziness. There's whistleblowers. I mean, this is a very fun and interesting, from my perspective, story because there's so many aspects to it. And I'm not going to cover any of that today because the reality is this incident is a speck of sand. This incident is a drop in the bucket. This incident is just the tip of the iceberg of what could potentially be happening and what has already been happening. It's just that this particular issue with Facebook and Cambridge Analytica has managed to grab people's attention. There is a lot going on here, and there's a lot more to come. And I think it's important for all of us, myself included, to be critically aware of what's happening. Now, if you are freaked out about having a Facebook account right now, it would behoove you to delete your Facebook account, not stop using it, not use it less, not make it invisible. There's a lot of different options for your Facebook account, but actually delete it. I put up a video this last July 4th of 2017 that I called my Facebook Independence Day. I'll put a link to it wherever you're finding this video, and that walks you through step by step of how to delete your Facebook account. It's fairly straightforward, but they don't exactly make it glaringly obvious. One thing I want to make sure I point out to people in case they've missed this: Facebook and Instagram are kind of one and the same thing. So in order to delete Facebook completely, you really need to delete your Instagram account as well. Deleting the application doesn't do nothing. You need to delete all of it, all of your accounts, and there's very specific steps to do so, and it usually actually takes a couple of weeks before your data is actually fully removed. Check the video out I put up, and it'll walk you through those details. All right. Before I get into the real nitty-gritties of all this, one aspect of this story jumped out at me as highly amusing, and I simply wanted to highlight it. The United Kingdom's Parliament has issued a request to Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook, to appear in person to answer questions about all of this, which I think is fairly reasonable request. However, they sent the request on a letter, literally a printed out letter. I've got it up on the screen right now. It literally starts, "Dear Mr. Zuckerberg." I love how formal this is. And I'll jump past the contents of the letter. What I wanted to point out is that they sent this letter via postal mail to Menlo Park, California, zip code 94205. The only problem is that's not the zip code for Menlo Park, California. That is the zip code for Sacramento, California, which is an entirely different city a couple hours drive away. So we'll see if Mark Zuckerberg gets the letter in person. He might actually just be reading the letter online like all of the rest of us. I thought that was funny. Now, moving on. I'm going to read you a little snippet from an article published earlier today from The Guardian. And then I want to move on because I feel like this kind of kicks things off nicely. Here we go. Hundreds of millions of Facebook users are likely to have had their private information harvested by companies that exploited the same terms as the firm that collected data and passed it on to Cambridge Analytica, according to a new whistleblower. Sandy Parakilis, the platform operations manager at Facebook responsible for policing data breaches by third-party software developers between the years 2011 and 2012, told The Guardian he warned senior executives at the company that its lax approach to data protection risked a major breach. Here's the part that I found fascinating. Asked what kind of control Facebook had over the data given to outside developers, he replied, zero. Absolutely none. Once the data left Facebook servers, there was not any control and there was no insight into what was going on. Now here's the thing. Once data leaves you or anyone else's servers, you don't have control over it. It's easy to copy. It could go anywhere. There is no possible way. None. Zero. Zilch. There's no technical way. There's no legal way, etc. That once that data left Facebook, that Facebook or me or you or anyone else could actually have control over that data. It's not a physically possible thing to have accomplished. So that statement that he makes there, what's his name? Sandy Parakilis made is absolutely true. However, it's not quite as damning of Facebook as it would be at first glance, because there is no company on planet Earth that once they give data to someone else can then totally control that data. It's not possible. Not even the companies who have wrapped so much data with DRM have been able to control what happens to the data once they send it out, no matter how good their DRM is. DRM gets cracked. Encryption schemes get cracked. Doesn't matter. You don't have control over it. Let's continue a little bit. The key takeaway here is, and I want to make this very crystal clear, if this has you concerned, if you read the news stories about this, you might be concerned. And I think you should be concerned. I am concerned. I think we all should be concerned. However, I think we should be extraordinarily concerned because this is a tiny little thing. This is peanuts compared to what could happen and what has happened and what is happening elsewhere. I did a presentation. I go around and do dog and pony shows fairly regularly. And I was back at a Linux festival. Actually, this was at Linux Fest Northwest in 2017. I did a presentation called They're Watching You, which, despite being a somewhat over-the-top title, is somewhat apropos to today, where I walked through how much data, just absolutely massive amounts of data, is being collected about me, you, and every other man, woman, and child on planet Earth on a daily basis, who has control over it and what they're doing with that data. Not in a conspiratorial way, not in a I'm wearing a tinfoil hat sent to me by Martians. It's a real issue based purely on the data that we're collecting from these for-profit companies. So I'll link to that video as well. I recommend checking that out, not to plug my own video, but because it goes into a lot of the data we're talking about here and then some others as well. Back in 2016, it was revealed that Yahoo had been making the entirety of its Yahoo Mail service available to the NSA and potentially others as well. And basically what they were allowing was an outside entity, a government agency, to have complete and total searchable access to every last little bit of data that went through the Yahoo Mail servers, which meant that if people had a Yahoo email account, we knew for a fact that Yahoo was kind of playing fast and loose with giving that email, that data away to outside agencies, other vendors, whether it be government agencies or businesses. There are 225 or were 225 Yahoo Mail users. I'm not sure what the exact number is today. This number was from a year ago. It's the latest and greatest number I could find. All right, when it says 225 Yahoo Mail users, that should say 225 million. Apparently, I left the word million out. 225 is how many Yahoo email users there should be. However, there are 225 million of them. That is a huge number. But to put that into perspective, the population of the world, I can't believe I left the word million out, is 7.6 billion people. That's a lot of people, right? So think about that for a moment as we go through these coming numbers. 7.6 billion people are in the world. There are over 2 billion Android devices that are actively in use. That doesn't include devices that you're not using anymore. We're talking about active in use, hitting Google's servers on a regular basis, Android devices. 2 billion. That is a significant portion of the entire world's population. Now, think about this for a moment. Even if you are not actively using a wide variety of Google services, which you probably are if you are using an Android device, they still know, because you are using it, your location, your billing information, where you go, where you travel to, all information about you galore is made available to them. That is a lot of data of 2.5 billion people. That's a lot. That's a lot. And there are over 1 billion iOS devices, iPhones and iPads in use right now. Again, there are a little over 7 billion people worldwide, which means 1/7 of the world's population, after you spread it all out, has iPhone devices. Now, to be fair, a lot of people probably have a couple of iOS gadgets in play at any given time, so it's not really 1/7 of the population. It's probably a much smaller number than that, but that's the total numbers. And again, that is a huge amount of data that is being gathered at all times by Apple alone, and not just your billing data, not just where you are, who you call, who you're friends with, but we're talking about all that iCloud data as well, who you message, the messages you send. That data is stored. What files you upload, your photos. You remember the iCloud hacks and leaks that have occurred over the last several years? Those will continue. They just will. No one has ever made an unhackable server. It's never been done before. The best you can do is try your best to be as secure as possible. But the more people you put on a singular service, the more valuable that target becomes. And the more individuals, organizations, countries, companies, whatever, will have an interest, a financial interest in getting to that data. And the more they're going to be willing to invest into breaching that. And a lot of times, you don't have to breach it. Because a lot of times, as we're seeing with Facebook and Cambridge Analytica, the companies are just happy to sell you access to that data. There are over 1 billion users of Google Maps, YouTube, Gmail, Google Play, and several other Google services in use all the time. That's a lot of people. That's a ton of people, 1 billion people. Now think about this. If you are, let's say, an avid Google user and you've got Google Maps, well, if you use Google Maps regularly, that means that Google and potentially related services know where you are at almost all times, where you go, where you want to go, how often you go there, what routes you take to get there, seriously, what your mode of transportation is, all these sorts of things. YouTube, they know what videos you watch, what you like, what you don't like, what you comment on. In Gmail, they know every piece of communication that you send or gets sent to you, and they know who you are talking to at all times. Via Google Play, they know all that, plus they know your bank account information, your billing information, what you buy, your subscriptions, all of it. As you compile this data together, data on over 1 billion people, you can glean a lot of information. And it's important to remember that Google is, first and foremost, a marketing and data analytics and collections company. That's how they make their money. They don't make it from selling Android devices. I mean, they make a little. What they make money on is the data they harvest and then sell. That's not a conspiracy. That's simply their business model. And it's a known thing. That's their stated thing. And here's the crazy thing. Former and current heads of Google have a vested interest in specific political candidates and parties. Now, this is not a political discussion that you and I are having here. However, many people have brought up the potential link between Cambridge Analytica and political parties and candidates. Multiple companies have those same sort of links, potentially even more so. In fact, the former head of Google actually founded a separate company to work with political candidates, working with Google data. The heads of the company are doing that. That's important to remember. So your data has been, currently is, and will continue to be used by all political parties, by many, if not mostly all political candidates, in ways you probably wouldn't be thrilled with. There are over 2.2 billion Facebook users. What we're talking about here is over 50 million. The Cambridge Analytica issues dealing with over 50 million Facebook users. There are over 2.2 billion active Facebook users. 2.2 billion. That is a huge percentage of the Earth's population. Remember, there's only 7.6 billion. Is that what it was? 2.2 billion Facebook users is a significant portion. Think about that for a moment. And the data that Facebook has on you, as I'm sure many of you are really, if not already fully aware, but becoming more aware, is profound. The amount of data, they know who you talk to, they know what you think about things, they know what you like about things, they know where you are typically on any given day of the week. They know where you are right now. They know what you look like. They know what your friends look like. They know how you talk to them. They know what you say to them. They know all of this, and all of that data is for sale at all times. There are over 328 million active Twitter users. Same exact thing. You may think, oh, well, if when I use Twitter, I'm posting data publicly. I know I'm giving that data away publicly. Aha. But you're also informing Twitter's servers of where you are and when you post that information. That means that Twitter can glean a whole lot of data about you. In fact, if you go into the analytics section of Twitter and you really dig through there, you would be amazed at how much absolutely astonishingly creepy data you can glean about the people that you follow and follow you on Twitter. Their demographics, their gender, things that they're into, things that they're tending to like, their location, everything. You can find out it all. And Twitter makes that data available. And Twitter sells information because they're just like Facebook, just like Google. They're a marketing and advertising and data analytics company. That's what they do. These companies are not technology firms. They are marketing and data collection firms. That's where they make their money. If you took that out of the picture, they would all go out of business. They would all be instantly gone because they don't have enough other business to sustain themselves at all. If you use Uber, there's 40 million active Uber users out there. Same basic idea. They know where you're going, where you tended to go, potentially who you were with when you did that. It's a lot of information, and you better believe that the company is going to make use of that. There are 5 million 23andMe users. This is kind of an interesting one because this is actually a DNA mapping service. There's 5 million people who sign up for 23andMe, myself included, to get their DNA mapped. That means that my DNA is in a database held with 5 million other people. That is a highly valuable target. Highly valuable. Oh my Lord. And there's 118 million Netflix users. Now you might be thinking to yourself, come on, what sort of data can you glean about that? Well, my location, who I am, my billing information, when I tend to be at what locations. So I tend to be at work during such and such hours. Anytime I load up and utilize Netflix, or anyone utilizes my Netflix account, that tells them where they were at and when. That's very valuable information, not even including the fact that they then have all the information about everything I've ever watched, what I've rated, etc. That's valuable information to sell to other individuals, and that's a valuable hacking target. There are 1.6 billion unique visitors to Reddit every month. This is from the month of December alone of this last year. 1.6 billion. Now, granted, that number of actual people using Reddit's probably a bit smaller than that. I tried to find some good detailed information about the total number of active Reddit users. I had a hard time doing that in any way that I felt was reliable, but the 1.6 billion unique visitors told me a great deal. Again, you go to Reddit. You may have an account that you feel is somewhat anonymous on Reddit. It's pretty easy to tie that back into a physical location, sets of IP addresses, unless you're using IP spoofing. But even then, and tying it into grammatical analytics. Seriously, people can figure out who you are based on that. The things, the subreddits you subscribe to, the things you read, the way you upvote and downvote, that's all very valuable data to harvest, mine, and sell, both in individual sales and sales is aggregate data to other companies. It's important to remember these things. And to me, even more frightening is that there are currently in use roughly 27 billion Internet of Things devices in the world. 27 billion. Remember, there are 7.6 billion people. There are several fold more IoT devices currently in use than there are human beings. The estimate is that that number will hit 125 billion by 2030. The growth trend supports that. I don't know if that's really going to happen or not. However, 27 billion all by itself is damned frightening. Now, when we're talking about IoT devices, the amount of data being pulled by them is all over the map, and where that data gets sent is all over the map. It could be things that bring in very little data, or we could be talking about things like Alexa, Google Home, etc., that collect absolutely monstrously huge amounts of data, including things that you're just saying around the house, not thinking that it's listening. It is. Always. It's damn scary. The amount of data being pulled is absolutely huge. There are, in fact, very, very few things about you that are not being collected, aggregated, and made searchable by dozens, if not hundreds, if not thousands of for-profit corporations, as well as related government agencies around the world. Again, this is not a conspiracy theory. This is not, oh my gosh, there's aliens crawling through my walls and are going to mind control me. No. This is an actual thing. We know this because many of these companies brag about their numbers in these fields because they are for-profit, in many cases, publicly traded companies. Now, if you are giving your data away, you don't have any control over it. Just like Facebook has no control over what the companies that they do business with, what they do with the data, once it leaves Facebook's hands, it's out of Facebook's hands. I'd love to say Facebook is responsible for what happens to the data after it leaves their hands, but they can't control it. Should they have let it go in the first place? No. It was a jerk thing of Facebook to do to collect the data. It was a jerk thing of Facebook to do to make it available for others for sale. It's awful. It's immoral. It's unethical. It's just terrible. However, there's no way to control it. Once I post information to Twitter, it's out of my hands. I can't control it anymore. I can maybe delete a tweet, but it's already on Twitter's servers. It's already been stored and indexed. It's probably already been archived by archive.org and many other web crawlers out there. It potentially might even have been screenshotted by a few thousand people. You never know. If you upload a picture to Facebook, it's not really yours anymore. I mean, depending on the service you're using to upload that picture, you may own the rights to it, but what you do with that photo, you can't control it. You can't say, Facebook, don't index that photo. You can't do that. You really can't, because they've got that data now. You don't have any control. And there is zero way that that data, once you've sent it somewhere else, can be secure completely. It is not possible. We've seen breach after hack, after leak of data, and it will continue, and it won't end, because there is no way to secure the servers. That's not, sky is falling, put on your tinfoil hats now sort of thing. It's simply a fact. I've spent most of my professional life leading software companies, leading organizations developing software. Usually that had a very large server component. And you do your best to keep things secure. You do your best to keep users' data private. But the reality is, and many people don't seem to like to talk about this, but you can't secure it completely. There will always be vulnerabilities, both technical and human. There's no way around it. There will never be a way around it. We've never figured that out yet, and we won't. In fact, the rate of data breaches, of hacks, is escalating. You've seen it. I've seen it. We've all seen it. It's not a bad thing or a good thing. It just is. We just simply have to come to terms with it. And another thing to remember is that this data is supremely valuable. If you send that data up to Facebook, Google, etc., Twitter, these are marketing firms. These firms have become some of the biggest businesses in the world, in human history, simply collecting, collating, analyzing, making it searchable, and then selling your data to others. That's what they do. There is no way that's going to stop. I can't think of a way. If we made it so that it was so costly to collect that data, Google, Facebook, and Twitter would go away tomorrow. They would be gone, out of business, because they don't have a backup revenue source that is even a fraction as large. Well, technically it is a fraction, but it's a crazy tiny fraction as large as what is related to their data collection. They need that in order to survive. So it's just not going to go away. And as long as that data is that valuable monetarily, we can't stop that. And there are so many companies doing this. It is obscene. Here's a very tiny list. Various Internet of Things devices. Yeah, they're watching you. Uber, Google, Facebook, Twitter, Microsoft, Apple, Reddit, eBay, Dropbox, AT&T, T-Mobile, Sprint, Verizon, Netflix. So many. So many. And that doesn't mean that these companies are evil. It doesn't. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person for having used them. I use several of these as well. But it does mean that we are knowingly giving our data to companies that are for profit, that are currently in the business of, and clearly are going to expand the business of, making money off of our data, finding ways to monetize it, whether that's providing access of other companies to us or to our data, detailing and analyzing that data, what have you. It's going to continue, and it's going to ramp up because it has been. So why won't it continue? And I'll make a bold prediction right now. In 2018, the current year we're in, there will be more data breaches than ever, and there will be more sold data than ever, and you and I can't stop it. There's nothing we can do. There's nothing at all we can do. There's no way to legislate this. Because again, if we were to convince all the senators and MPs and presidents and prime ministers that we need a fix for this, the only way to fix it is to make it so costly to collect and analyze and make that data available that it is no longer viable, in which case all of those biggest companies in the world, poof, gone. They're out of business. Therefore, the governments won't do that. They won't. So there is no way to legislate it. The legislature could say, you have to make it secure and trackable. That's great. That would be a great law, except there's no actual way to accomplish that. Like practically, there's no way to actually enact that in the real world with computers. So therefore, there is no way to legislatively fix this. The only solution is to change what information me, you, and all of us as people give away to each other, to organizations, to for-profit companies. That is the only fix for this. And it's not even a complete fix, because the reality is we can limit things. But in today's day and age, it is very hard to go anywhere, to do anything without some level of data being collected on you. It is extraordinarily hard. Just going outside, if you're in a city, a little bit of data is being collected on you. And it's true. But the only solution is for us to change our habits. And that's kind of what I wanted to make a point of today, is a lot of people are freaking out, rightly so. You should freak out about this. You should yell at Facebook about this. You should yell at Cambridge Analytica. You should yell at all the parties involved. You should then yell at our governments to try and do something about this. You should yell at the other companies that aren't even involved in this particular issue, because they're probably doing something similar. But the reality is it falls to us. And as long as we're trading the rights and control of our data away to other companies in exchange for a little bit of fun, a little bit of convenience, to be able to use some app that our friends are using, well, then the problem is going to continue to grow and escalate. There's no way around it. That is simply how things work. That's just logic. And this episode of Sadness and Dreariness is brought to you in part by Pogo Linux. who have Linux right in the name. That's how you know they love open source and freedom. If you want to go over there, you go to pogolinux.com. You can get some of the most amazing servers. Let's say, for example, you're a company and you don't want to have all of your company's data being stored by companies like Microsoft, Dropbox, Google, Amazon, because they then control your data. That's how that works. Let's say you want to take back control. You get a big server from Pogo Linux, put a bunch of drives in her, and you host it in-house. At least that gives you a little bit more control over your own data. That might not be a bad idea. You can find out more over at pogolinux.com and System76, who make really, really great laptops preloaded with Linux, like the good Lord intended. You can find out more over at System76.com. Right now, you won't be able to find me on any social media site. I'm doing a thing where I try and use computers more like I used to use computers back in the late 80s. I'm not using old 1980s computers. I'm just doing like a 1980s workflow type thing, but that means I'm not currently on any social media site, at least not for the next 25 whatever days. So if you need to get a hold of me, brian@lunduke.com. You can also go over to patreon.com/brianlunduke, or you can telnet into my BBS. Yeah, I got a BBS up and running. Why? Because it's awesome, and I'm old school like that at bbs.lunduke.com. You can find out more information at lunduke.com. If you have questions for this Linux Thursday, you want to email them over to brian@lunduke.com with the subject line #Linux Thursday. If you don't know what Linux Thursday is, you are missing out. We talk about Linux free software, open source, all that good stuff every Thursday here, and you get to drive what topics we talk about. And since we're not on social media for the next couple of weeks, we're bringing in all the questions via email. And also, if you go over to lunduke.com, you can find a whole bunch of shirts with cool Linuxy quotes, like these quotes from Linus Torvalds, like this quote where Linus says that you have to be a sneaky bastard to build a system like Linux. You can't go wrong with having that on your chest. Kill all human shirts, all that good stuff. And if you want to become a Patreon supporter like many of these fine folks and make what I do possible to keep the lights on here in Lunduke Studios, you can go over to patreon.com/brianlunduke. And every bit of help is very, very much appreciated. All right. Everyone have a really good day. Go about your life. Try not to post too many things to Twitter and Facebook, or delete your Facebook account entirely. That's probably for the best. Either way, don't let it bum you out. Go outside, drink an iced tea in the sunshine, and try and forget that the internet exists. It'll make you feel better.